here today with Matthew Noble with the Practical Practitioner. What else do people need to know?
So much we could dive into. Realistically, I think my statement would be, don't accept the status quo. Ask questions, be educated, get educated, do research, and learn as much as you can about yourself and what you need. And don't just accept, what someone else may be doing that's working for them. That's great, but you are unique. You are genetically different than everyone. You have different predispositions. You have different responses. And as a result of that, health needs to be treated on an individual basis. There's only one you, and there's only one plan for you. And I would invite you to figure out what that is, even if it's not with me. I will say that with this particular stuff that we're doing with genetic integration and a lot of the things that we've discussed, it is proprietary and intellectually property owned by what we do. So a lot of no one else really can do it. There's always other things out there. I'm not saying we're the end all be all. We're just doing our best with where we're at and trying to make a difference and empower. So just my biggest takeaway would just don't accept what is. Ask questions and learn.
And I would say, if there's any MDs listening, I know as a patient, especially as some woman who hits, when you're perimenopausal, forget it. It's like you walk in and doctors offer you, and really sweet people who are, seem to be very wanting to help. And this has been in different cities because I haven't just lived in Reno. I've lived in Atlanta prior to this too. Mm-hmm. And it's just like, you qualify for a drug.
Yeah.
Exactly. You don't need it. And then this is a quote. Well, you don't need it, but you qualify. And this is the face. It's just happy. Like it's Halloween and I'm giving out candy. And maybe some women are going to be fine with that. But if we could have we need some options, and we need the option of going for someone like me who's like, I want the most natural type of food, and tell me you just give me the supplement list and the food list. For a while, if you're busy, it's just like, I would just go with that, but I'm not going to. And this last visit I had, I said no to, I think 3 drugs. And finally she's like, no, you have to have this one. You have to. And it was a topical cream. So I'm like, okay, whatever, just I looked at, I took the prescription. I looked at it and it says, will probably cause cancer. I'm like, well, for something I don't need.
Yeah.
So we want another something, options.
Yeah, there's a lot of gray area when it comes to that. Through my own experience with my amazing wife, I say this with the utmost respect. We have been going through perimenopause because it's not just her. It's both of us. We are going through it together. I have learned so much about that topic and about how misrepresented it is and how many holes are in the application of the treatment. It is scary. So you remember the MTHFR we were talking about?
Yeah.
That is super, super important to perimenopause and to hormone balance in women. Okay. So we did a genetic mapping on my wife. She is what's called double heterozygous. That means that she has about a 70 to 80% methylation pathway impairment, genetically predisposed. And technically, she should have never been born because the cells just don't work that way. So because of that, she, like most people, started having these things, went to the doctor, and the old fart traditional medicine goes, you need estrogen because you are not making it. That's not always true. And I am not telling you not to do that, but I will tell you to question it. Because if you go to your doctor and they just start shoving you on estrogen, I would ask you to do a full hormone panel and do a methylation panel and find out how your body is going to detox, because we had to put her through an estrogen detox for a year. It absolutely destroyed her.
Oh my.
The rebuild we have had to do on her because that doctor did not know what they were doing is infuriating. And she suffered like she should have never had to. So if you are MTHFR positive in any fashion, your body is going to have an issue regulating and detoxing estrogen. So if your doctor just blindly puts you on estrogen and you have impairment at MTHFR, you could be in for a really bad ride.
Oh,
And
that's
most of these doctors don't even know that. They don't even know to check for it. You know, genetically, there's a lot of things where we work in cardiology a lot where, you know, you'll go and they'll do the, you know, blood pressure cuff and say, oh, you have high blood pressure. Okay. But do you really? What you don't see is that person's consuming 500 milligrams of caffeine. Well, they're a slow metabolizer of caffeine because when you genetically map and you look at the gene CYP1A2 and it tells you that they don't metabolize caffeine very well, and that if they go above 200, and that's arbitrary for the person, if they take in 200 milligrams of caffeine or more, guess what? Now you're getting a false reading that they have high blood pressure when they really don't. They just need to stop drinking too much caffeine. There's a lot of things that are in play like that. Your genetics are going to give us insights like that through the clinics and being able to say, you know, fasting. Like there's a big thing right now trending. Oh, autophagy. Okay, great. Again, MTHFR. If you're MTHFR positive, autophagy is not good for you. It can give you a cellular storm. Autophagy is designed to fast and it lets your body kick into its cellular defense and it cleans out what's called senescent cells or dead and dying cells and it'll attack the diseases. Okay, that's great. But if your methylation pathways are impaired, you don't detox those things. Guess what happens when you get into autophagy and you break down toxins? You reabsorb them into your body and now you're worse.
Oh, gosh.
So there's a lot of reason why these things matter in clinical data because you could just be blindly following something and going, oh, I'm doing a 72-hour fast. I spoke with someone the other day. We went through her genetic panel and looking at the FTO gene and really understanding that, you know, fasting over more than 12 hours for her is just not good.
You know, have you found with women in general, because I just had this conversation over Thanksgiving because I have a nephew who's big on fasting. And so then my brother and his wife were fasting. And so we were having that conversation with, we've heard, but not sure. Have you heard anything about that with women? Fast less?
It varies. I will tell you, in perimenopause specifically, fasting can be really, really dangerous because of the stress on the body. You know, everybody's different. I would say I wouldn't recommend it for the masses. That doesn't mean it wouldn't be good for some individuals, but again, it would really determine or would be determined by their genetic deviations, if any. If you have no deviation, if we're looking at a genetic map and we're looking at MTHFR and COMT, CBS, MTR, those types of things, looking at your ADPQ and your CYP1A2 and your FTO genes, things like that, I would caution against it for people that have deviations there. And, you know, statistically right now, that's estimated around 80% of Americans. So I would say through that would probably be about 60% of the females in this country, if not higher. We don't know. We don't have like empirical data because the clinical studies just aren't there because they just aren't allowed to be done. But, you know, estimations based on what we can see right now, that's a really large number of, you know, females in America are going to struggle with that. If you watch the trends of, you know, spontaneous abortions, people have miscarriages, that's kind of a trend. And you can kind of look how those things have trended up over the last 10, 20 years. That's kind of an indicator of what's going on. You know, all of the things where we're seeing, you know, injuries from certain shots and things like that have gone through the roof, you know, and the implications of following the blind application of those things is getting more and more inherently dangerous by the year.
Yeah, I can, and this is really why I think I like the idea of really specific testing too.
Yeah.
You know, and I've had, you know, and the thing is when you're misdiagnosed or they miss things, I mean, that can cause people to just die. And,
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely it can. Well,
you know,
malpractice is very high in America because of those types of things. I can't tell you how many people they go in for what's quote unquote routine and they don't come back out because there's unseen things. You know, the amount of warnings and restrictions on, some of these medications is astronomical. It's like, the side effects of it are worse than the thing that it's designed to treat. Like, the Nexium. I used to take Nexium when it first came out when I was younger. And I'm like, I feel worse when I'm taking it. I'd rather just have the acid reflux. I have the worst migraines. I'm like, I can fix this. So I used to have acid reflux because I didn't understand what was causing it. Well, then I figured out what was causing it with the way that my body works cellularly, and I don't have it anymore. It's magic.
Mm.
I just stopped the cause. I don't need a prescription drug to take down in there and stop these things. Now, there are things with like acid reducers, they are good for allergens and things here and there, but there's mechanisms for everything. There's good and bad. And I'm not saying that we don't need medications, and sometimes they're life-saving and they're great, and I'm grateful for them, but we don't need them on the scale that they're on. And this is a very scary statistic. I'll throw a couple out. 95% of all of the prescription drugs in the world are used by Americans. We represent 5% of the world. 5% of this world, we consume 95% of all prescription drugs on this earth.
And I can tell you from who I know, it's just normal.
Mm-hmm.
You just do it.
It's social norming. It's been taught that way.
It's such social norming.
Yeah.
I hadn't heard that statistic. That is, you just look at the statistics and you're like, this is not okay. Like, cancer rates in Iowa being so high.
Yeah.
And, I'm there when they first start spraying Roundup and buried the relatives, and nobody benefits from this. It doesn't matter what side of the political aisle you're on. It doesn't matter your age. It's like none of us are benefiting from all of these chemicals being put into our environment.
Well, the corporations,
into our food, and all of and all of the.
So if you look at it on average, you got about 14 commercials for drugs every hour, and they're targeted to younger generations. And right now, the latest data that just came out is the refined grains, cookies, cakes, bread, sugary, like junk, not like, complex carbs like rice and sweet potatoes, vegetables, white potatoes, things that are just in its natural state. We're talking about junk carbs. And please, for the love of God, don't be afraid of carbs. But the junk, 60% of all calories consumed in America are junk.
Yeah.
That is staggering. And the ratio of junk carbs to protein is 6-1.
And I just watch it go down, and it's kind of terrifying. And the other thing that's really scary is the stuff that's been given to, Gen Z, some millennial and younger, with different energy drinks and vaping and the different.
Yeah, well,
which I'm not like. I mean, I know so many. I know all the people that are doing that, and I'm like, it's just it's very concerning to me. But it just seems like it's increasing. Like we never learned a lesson along the way to maybe we shouldn't be. We haven't learned a lesson. It's just like we're accelerating. We're not slowing down.
The average teenager in America consumes 5 energy drinks a day. That's insane. That's 1,000 milligrams of caffeine. That will kill you. Now, here's a little trick people don't realize. These drinks all have, 200, 300 milligrams of caffeine in them, right? Well, you'll see in most of these drinks, we know the most popular ones. I won't say them. They have 1,000 milligrams of taurine in them as well. Taurine's an amino acid. You want to know why there's so much taurine in these energy drinks? Because the amount of caffeine. So the taurine helps you to not have a heart attack. Because if the taurine wasn't in there and you consume those, you would be dead. And they know that.
Cheapers.
So the whole reason why these things are designed is they have formulas in there. It's addiction, right?
They should not ever have been on the market.
They shouldn't have, but it's all corporations. This isn't about health, and it's not about anything but money. That's all that matters in this scenario. So we're going to take a lot of this and just enough of this so this doesn't hurt you. And this is going to make you so addicted that you're going to go through more and more and more. So when you're consuming 2, 3, 4, 5 of them a day, I don't want you to die because that's a bad reputation for me. So I'm going to put something in there that's going to stop that from happening. And guess what? Over the course of time, it's going to build up and it's going to happen anyway. But by then we will have made billions and we won't care. That's the dynamic that we work in this country. And it's horrible. But luckily there are some of us that are, trying to stop that and try to change it. And and not standing on a soapbox, waving a flag. You guys are horrible and corrupt. We all know that. The only way, like I said earlier, the only way to change it is by giving the power back to the patient and the practitioner and take money away from them. If you stop the funding, you stop the mission.
That's true. Yeah, for sure. And I walk into grocery stores now and it doesn't matter if it's Whole Foods or not. It's like I just want to throw things. Because I read the labels and then I get really mad. Like at Whole Foods, there might be one that doesn't have something in it that's not good for you.
Yeah, and there's a lot of
one out
there with things.
And that's at Whole Foods, right?
Yeah.
So it's like I just feel like this is it's
a big smoke and mirror show. It really is. All the things that, this is healthy for you. Well, this is subjective to the person. One thing that might be healthy for you might not be healthy for the person, right? It's the same thing like when we do genetic mapping, we go into diets and stuff like that. And what should a person eat? How do they process carbs and fats? How do I know? Well, a lot of times, you may say, keto is the best thing on earth, or carnivore diet. That's trending right now. Carnivore. And because carnivore was great for me, you should do it too. Well, carnivore might kill you. Keto might make you fatter than you've ever been, because if you have a deviation on your FTO gene that you don't process fats like that, I'm not a fat responder. I don't oxidize fat very well. I can't eat a lot of fat. I'm a glucose responder. I can eat carbs all day long and I feel amazing and I just drop. But if I eat keto, and I've done this experiment just to prove my point, if I eat keto, I just balloon.
Interesting.
My body does not respond to dietary fat. That doesn't mean don't eat any. You need some for hormones, of course, but there's a cap. I can eat 67 grams of fat a day. That's it. If I go above that, I feel horrible.
And you definitely look like a carnivore eater.
I love protein. I eat 50% of my calories is from protein. I'll eat at 350 to 400 grams of protein a day. And I love rice. Now there's a little hack. There's a thing going around and there's doctors saying this and it just infuriates me, but there's resistant starch carbs. Okay. Those are real. Resistant starch means that the molecule is simply shrunk in that carb and the starch takes longer to break down. It doesn't change the carbohydrate ratios. It just changes the speed in which your body processes them. So you don't have a glucose response. So when you take things like, potatoes, white potatoes are highly starchy. Rice is highly starchy, some less than others. If you take those things and you cook them and you cool them off, the molecule in them will shrink. And so when you consume them, whether you reheat them or eat them cold, I prefer sushi rice. I love it cold. I eat it with almost every meal. But the starch becomes a lot harder to break down because the molecule shrinks. So it becomes what we call starch resistant. Now it works in form of like a prebiotic in the gut. So it actually feeds the good gut bacteria, kind of like sourdough does. Now there's a lot of misinformation going around. And I've seen some doctors even saying this, just put your bread in the freezer. It doesn't work on bread because bread is processed. It's not a natural starch. And the starch that's in the bread that is natural is such a small amount. The starch resistance is completely useless. It is so minor, you're not getting any benefit out of it anyway. So when you see starch resistant stuff going around, rice and potatoes are really the only two things it works on. It doesn't work on pastas and breads because it's not just the natural starch that you're freezing or getting cold. It's all the other things in there, and those don't become starch resistant. So you got to be very careful about what you take as gospel from the internet because there is a lot of absolute nonsense.
Okay, so for the starch resistant thing, the way to cook it that's best for you is to cook it and let it cool?
Yes.
And then so eat it cool or reheat it either way?
You can reheat it or eat it cold. Once you've let it cooled, the starch resistant already kicks in because you're shrinking the molecule. So if you eat, let's say you make mashed potatoes, right, fresh, and you eat them, you're going to get a much higher glycogen response or glucose response from them. Same thing with rice. You let them cool off and eat them cold or reheat them. The glucose response is probably about 20 to 30% less than if you ate it warm, because it shrinks the starch molecule, so it becomes smaller, so it takes longer to digest. So let's just say, and I'm using this because I don't have graphs, but if you eat warm carbs, fresh rice, skyrocket, right? Now you have starch resistant rice, and it's just a nice smooth transition. Now, when you pair that with protein, guess what? Your glucose response is going to be even better, because your glucose is going to go up no matter what you eat, right? It's not just carbs. You eat proteins or fats, your glucose goes up. You work out, your glucose goes up. It doesn't matter. You can't stop that from happening. So your body has this process, and it's called gluconeogenesis. It's going to produce glucose from whatever you eat for your body's processes, for your brain health, right? And a lot of people say you don't need carbs to eat, and other people say I eat carbs because the brain needs glucose. Well, the brain's going to get glucose from whatever you give it. It doesn't need you to tell it. So if you choose to go low carb because that's what's best for you, because you're a fat oxidizer, guess what? Your body's going to take some of that fat and protein and turn it into glucose to keep your brain healthy. You don't have to worry about that. When you get into fat oxidization, you get into cellular apoptosis and all these other dorky things I won't get into right now. Your body knows what to do. Our whole goal is to just simply help it do that. Okay. And so getting this information and helping this regulate through these data sets on, how do I process fats and carbs? Should I fast? Should I not fast? What type of methylation pathway impairments do I have? How does my body respond to energy expenditures and all these things? You have a guidebook or a roadmap basically onto what your body responds best to. We can even tell you muscle fiber typing and how you should work out. Should you sprint? Should you do long distance running? Should you lift weights? Should you do CrossFit? Like, we can go through all of that and tell you genetically what your body's going to respond to.
That's very cool.
Glass, right? Now, so you don't have to guess, oh, well, I'm doing keto and doing HIIT classes 3 times a week because my friend did it and they had great results, and I'm just not seeing it. But that's because it's not for you.
That is very cool. So the stuff that the information that the doctor gets back from you will go through drug interactions, supplementations, genetic responses, what might work best for working out, like what else? Like, what else is in there?
Yeah. So we are about, I'd say, a solid 8 months into having the world's only intracellular NAD on the planet. And when I say intracellular, because it actually gets into the cell. So there's a lot
before you go into that, just for anyone who doesn't really know, including me, because I know what I've heard of NAD, but can you explain it a little bit, what it is?
Yes. So NAD is what they call the life molecule. It's nicotinamide dinucleotide, right? And so what that is, it's an enzyme that your body produces, and it starts to completely just degrade over the course of how you age, right? So it's anti-aging molecule, they call it. It's responsible for some energy, macular degeneration in your eyes, just a variety of cellular health, right? So the traditional thing that we've seen over the last couple of years is NAD injections. Hollywood made those famous. They're extremely expensive. They then started compounding them, so they were a little bit more affordable. But even still, you're talking to have it on a daily dose, which is something that you really need. You're talking $100 to $300 a day times 30 days. It's pretty expensive. Then you also have to sit there for 4 hours and do a slow drip if you do an IV, because if you do it too fast, you'll pass out. You can do intramuscular, which doesn't take quite as long, but it's still the same effect. And so that leads me to the intracellular portion of what I'm saying. So when you inject NAD, it is dinucleotide, which means 2. So it is a very large molecule. Let's just say that this is the cell in your body. We've injected NAD. It can't permeate into the cell because it's too big. The anatomical weight of it is too large. So it just hovers around the cell and it becomes extracellular or blood serum level NAD. And there's still some benefit to that. But I'll explain why in a minute, why that can be dangerous. So NAD is going to produce what's called ATP. It's adenosine triphosphate, and that is our body's fuel source. That's how our cells fire. And so with the ATP production, we get energy. We may see, oh, I got this injection and now I feel really good until it wears off, right? So depending on how deficient that person is going to depend on what needs to be done for them. Also, it's like a little mechanic. It's going to go where it needs to work first. So if you have a lot of inflammation in your bones, it's going to go work on that first. Now, there's a lot of really terrible things on the market. You see them all over social media right now. I'm not going to name names of companies, but they're telling you you can take this NAD product. Well, here's what I can tell you. If you're not injecting NAD in either IV or intramuscular, you're not getting any at all, because the only other options for these NAD products are mostly liquids. That doesn't work. You can't absorb it through the digestive tract because your stomach acid will absolutely destroy it. Your digestive tract is where it's going to need to go to absorb, and it can't. Now, they're going to throw magical marketing words at you like liposomal. It doesn't matter. You can wrap it in whatever you want. It will not survive. There's so much clinical data out there on that. And there's a lot of marketing hype, and you might feel some placebo effect from it. But at the end of the day, it's still extracellular, even if you're getting the injections. Now, enter the picture. Science discovers this little thing called nicotinamide mononucleotide, which is a precursor of NAD. It is about 1/3 the size, and it can actually permeate the cell, which is wonderful, except the fact that you can't inject it because it's too volatile. So then guess what? Oh, well, let's put it into a pill or a powder or a liquid. Guess what? Digestive system, it still will not work. It doesn't work because it can't get to where it needs to get.
Okay.
So about 1.5 years ago, we started working on how can we get this into the system by bypassing that and making it cost effective. So we have these things in our mouths called the salvage pathways, or the oral mucosa, or the buccal, right? And there are some prescription drugs because people need to bypass the digestive system to get it into their blood, because otherwise it gets rendered ineffective. Okay. So we came up with this little crystalline strip, kind of like Listerine. You've seen those little Listerine strips?
Right.
Very similar to that. We were able to come up with a crystalline form of NMN, and we have a proprietary formula to this where it has some really cool stuff in it, which I can't divulge, but we get the NMN to dissolve in through the oral mucosa. It gets into the bloodstream in 6 minutes, and it actually crosses into the cell. So it gets the NMN inside the cell, which then creates the ATP and converts into NAD inside the cell where it should be in the first place, not hanging around outside.
Okay.
That also is the only mechanism that crosses into the blood-brain barrier. NAD cannot cross into the blood-brain barrier. I don't care how much of it you inject. It can't get through there. So we've taken that technology and put it into this clinical data set, and it is absolutely revolutionary. And I can't get into some of the things that we have on the calendar for this month, but I can say this: the conversations that we've been having, we are talking to some serious heavy hitters in the medical space because of this. Now, why that's important to get that NMN into the cell so that it can create NAD. If you understand what I said earlier about how NAD produces ATP, and ATP is the energy of our cell. Okay. If you have a cancer diagnosis and you have cancerous cells in your body, the last thing you want to do is give them energy. So if you have a cancer diagnosis and you start taking NAD, guess what happens? Cancer cell proliferation. You are going to get worse.
Oh.
It will make your cancer spread and speed up like you wouldn't believe. So enter NMN does the exact opposite, because NMN activates what's called sirtuins, and sirtuins are like those little mechanics that kill those senescent cells. So if you have energy on the outside of a cell that's diseased, it's feeding that disease. But if you can get that energy on the inside of the cell where it's actually going to heal, I'll leave that up to your imagination what happens, because I can't say that word. Now, if you get energy into the cell and you allow it to start cleaning up all of those dead, what we call senescent cells or zombie cells you may see floating around social media, you're able to get your body back into a homeostatic state where your body is balanced, you're dropping inflammation, and all these wonderful things start happening. So it's really, really important to make that key distinction, which is why I have it set up on the website that way of bioenergetics, is understanding the difference between intracellular and extracellular, because they are very different and they work very differently. And one can have really drastic negative outcomes for certain people. And there's a lot of white noise all over social media about NAD therapy. And I can tell you this wholeheartedly with zero bias, 98% of it is absolute garbage marketing. That's all it is.
Yeah, that's really interesting. So can you tell me, for those of us who aren't in the medical space necessarily, senescent, how do you spell that? Is that how, did I say it right?
Yes, senescent cells. Honestly, I couldn't tell you off the top of my head how to spell it. I want to say it was going to be SCENESC or ECE, I believe, something to that effect.
Okay.
I know how.
As long as I got the word right. So
yeah,
okay.
senescent, aka or zombie cells. So senescent just means dying.
Okay, so cells that need to get flushed out of your body, basically, they aren't helping you.
Yeah, so that's kind of
disease or something.
That's kind of the whole point of why people try to get into autophagy, to have that happen naturally. Again, it doesn't
Right.
happen at the way that people think it does. Again, but if you are in a position genetically where autophagy is bad for you, then that's irrelevant and you won't be able to do that anyway. So SIRT1 activities, you have SIRT1, SIRT3, those are going to activate in your body. They're going to work into antioxidants and those types of mechanisms to really try to flush out those types of things and be like anti-inflammatory. And inflammation doesn't always have to be pain. Inflammation can be response. It can be, a lot of different mechanisms where you're going to get a negative response from something you may never actually feel.
Yeah.
So really what we want to get across is understanding that, the wave of the future is now. There's a lot of emerging science that's out there and people just don't know about it. And, if I'm being completely transparent, the whole point of why this was developed was for hospitals and doctors' offices, and big pharma just was so afraid of it because they said that works. You can't bring that here.
You can't bring what here? What you're doing?
This whole thing. Yeah, you can't be here. You cannot be here because this works and you're going to destroy our business model. You have to go. And so that's why we go, private clinician, because they can't do anything about that. You can't stop me. I might not be able to get into a traditional hospital, but you can't stop me from getting into an individually run clinic because you have no say so. You're not going to lord over this. Now, I will say there are, some in the traditional hospital sense that are really tuning into this because they know what they want to do and they have the right heart. Their whole point is to keep people from needing drugs and to keep people off of their operating table. And if that's the mission, then that's what this is for. This is an adjunct, if nothing else, an adjunct to traditional therapies that may be needed depending on where somebody may be in their journey. In no way am I claiming any, cures, treatments, diagnosis, or anything of those diseases, because that's not where we're legally allowed to live. Thank you to the amazing FDA and their nonsense. We have to walk a fine line with what we can do and say, and it is what it is. It's the world we live in, but I'm going to stretch that as far as I possibly can and, really just partner up with the like-minded people across the country that are wanting to do what we're doing, and, the sky's the limit. So to me, I think of a quote I actually learned the other day, and Jamie knows this, Brene Brown. I read a quote in her book and it said, "What gets in the way becomes the way." And I'm like, man, really soak that in. What gets in the way becomes the way. think about that in terms of your health, your finances, all the things in life, your relationships, whatever it is, your habits, your discipline, your workouts, the things that you're eating, whatever gets in the way becomes the way. Oh, I'm just going to have one brownie, and then it's two, and then it's three, and then it's every day. Well, what's getting in the way? The brownies are getting in the way. Yeah, but your decision is what's getting in the way. And then your bad decision becomes the way. And then we get into these, snowball effect of excuses and yeah, buts. Okay, cool. So it's not like you can't change these things, but they have to be identified. And to be able to identify those things, you've got to be able to be real with yourself. And so that goes back to what I was talking about earlier with burnout and understanding like identity crisis, right? So many of the clinics that I talk to are trying to do things to impact patients, and they're trying to do things the right way, but they're sacrificing their own futures and their own lives for it because they don't know any different. So big pharma, and I work with a lot of chiropractors. I love chiropractic. I, again, didn't divulge this earlier, I've actually been partially paralyzed twice as well. If it wasn't for chiropractic, I wouldn't even be able to walk.
Oh Lord.
I love chiropractic. It is so great. And so I do work with a lot of chiropractors because of a passion that I have for that.
Yeah.
But I can tell you this, that all these schools, they're teaching the same model, chase insurance. You want to know why? Because that's what big pharma paid for them to say and teach. They don't want chiropractic and proactive healthcare becoming the norm because it ruins what they want. So that's how they hold the thumb over the pulse, is they make you struggle by chasing insurance, and they keep regulating and not paying, and it's not medically necessary, and making it harder and harder for these doctors to even just get paid. This is a really wild and scary statistic. Okay. 80% of chiropractors never make more than $250,000. That's crazy. When you're seeing, 40 patients a day and you can't even track $250,000, and your expenses, you're $30,000 a month in expenses just to operate, and then you're chasing, $10,000 in profit because you're chasing insurance reimbursements. And you ever noticed all of these programs out there that are patient leads? Oh, we'll get you 50 more patients. I'm like, that's not the goal. I don't want 50 more patients. I just want $50,000 more seeing the exact same patients I'm already seeing.
Yeah, and I think I keep hearing this. It's like the way insurance runs is that they get it to the point where a primary care doctor, chiropractor, whatever, who's ever taking the insurance will not have time to take time to listen to you. So if you're not,
they don't want you to treat anybody because they don't want you to figure it out and cure anybody because they want to keep you in the machine. It's just like mortgages and all those things. America was designed, its financial institutions, its healthcare institutions, the food, all of it was designed to keep you sick and in payments.
Yeah. Well, that's probably a whole nother, not just podcast episode, maybe a whole nother podcast. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
That goes down a rabbit hole, but I certainly have heard plenty about what went down, 90, 100 years ago. Let's be honest. When it started. And we're just kind of like waking up to it a little bit here and there, maybe.
Becoming more prominent, yeah, but it's a lot of things that you just, like, well, why aren't we taught this stuff? And it's, well, because you're not meant to. That's how it's covered up, because you become compliant. And that's what it's all about, is compliance. So, okay, great. If the name of the game is compliance, then I am going to make sure that I can do everything I can to get these patients compliant to where it's beneficial for them and not for you.
Yeah.
So I have a big mouth and I'm going to use it.
Well, and also I think we're just talking about around some things too, but this would take more than this, and probably a lot of research on the part of the listener to understand. But you said you have some information on your blog on some of the.
Yeah, so I have a couple of blogs. I admittedly do not keep up with it as often as I should because I'm really just focused on the main thing. But yes, there's a little bit of information on the website. There's some blogs. There are a lot of individually broken down science pages. So I've got the bioenergetics. I've got the pharmacological cross-referencing for clinicians that are inclined to look at science. So we get into what's called nutrigenomics, nutrigenetics, epigenetics, all that type of stuff. If you are so inclined, feel free to check out the website, thepracticalpractioner.com, and feel free to message me on there if you have questions. I'm also on Facebook. I am open to any conversation with anybody at any time, and but the mission will not be deviated. I can promise you that.
Yeah, I love it. I would love to hear a little bit about this accident or whatever happened to you that made you almost paralyzed, and then you got better.
Yeah.
Tell
So
me a good story.
Yeah, it's so it was actually in a wrestling ring. When I was younger, I was a really big wrestling fan, and I actually just I got into the industry when I was younger, and
that just seeing if anyone is watching YouTube, where I was going to go, yeah, that fits.
Yeah,
what you're saying.
So I was involved in a match, and somebody was very careless, and rather than execute things properly, I was just dropped right on my neck. It was at a point where I had compressed my L5, my L3 and 4 were tilted. T11 was out, T12 was out, C5 was a little bit jacked up, C6 and 7 were completely out, and actually just a couple of years ago started fusing themselves together because of the trauma. And I had 1% spacing in my C1 disc. I was this close to being a vegetable.
My goodness.
So I love chiropractic because that's the only reason I can walk, and I'm very active. And there was a point where I had slurred speech, I had impaired movement, I couldn't walk for 3 months. I had to go through all of this rehab, and I was 19.
My goodness.
So problem. I didn't know what was going on. I just knew I was hurt. And I'm 19 years old, and they're like, oh, well, we're going to have to fuse your back. I'm like, I'm 19. You're going to fuse my back? There's no other way. No, there's no other way. And I'm like, no, I don't accept that. And that's how I found chiropractic.
Oh.
And I went through a lot of therapy, and it hurt my hip bone and my spine. My spine was so curved because of that. It used to rub on my hip. Imagine that. That hurt. I have never felt pain like that in my life. It was to the point where I was just in tears, and I was just crying, and I'm like, just shoot me. I can't take it anymore. It was so bad.
That sounds awful.
It was horrible. So needless to say, I've been through the ringer on a couple of things in my life, and I've just come out on the end stronger and very grateful and so blessed because of it. And so I want to take that blessing and pay it forward to people and do what I can, because it's a broken system, and we all know that. But again, rather than focusing on the fact that the system is broken, what can I do to genuinely change it? And so I'm trying to do that now. Yeah,
definitely a few things. How long did it take you to feel better from that? Course of a couple of years?
I mean, it was probably a good 10 years before it was really mostly gone. And honestly, I still have some issues in my lower back here and there, depending on what I do. But I'll get sciatic nerve pain here and there because my spine is very mobile, but sometimes that's not a good thing because I can crack a lot of it on my own. And I know, all of my DCs out there are like, never do that. It's not, I'm not like pushing. It just happens. Like I literally can I can manipulate my back muscles where I know, and I can literally crack like I just did. I just cracked my spine, just boom, just like that.
Well,
used to doing it. I learned how to get myself out of pain in times like that. But sometimes my hips will pop, my SI joints, things like that. And it's just, it's the biomechanics I've learned in my own body. Obviously, I'm not recommending anyone else do that, but I just know how I am, and I can manipulate a lot of that on my own because I've just learned how to do it. But if I'm ever in your city, please feel free to adjust my neck. I will totally let you.
That's funny. Yeah, I've gone to chiropractic since I was little too. So I think they're just, sometimes you get trained young that you're like, you want to take care of the pain in the most natural way possible. So I definitely have done that myself. Yeah. And very effective for sure.
I mean, there's different ways to do lots of things. I mean, you do you. I mean, I'm not going to judge what your decisions are, but there's just there's a lot of things out there that are just not good for everybody, right? There's no one size fits all when it comes to anything in life, really.
Yeah. And I just, that's part of what I'm doing. I think what you're doing too is going, there's other options besides, I think what's been so widely circulated as these are the only options. There's actually other options and I am very passionate myself about doing things that are hard for me to do, living in this world, how we live, but to go back to as much to nature as possible. And it just seems like for me, it seems like it's getting harder. Like it just seems
It
like
is.
it's getting like a harder thing to do.
Yeah, it's almost like a rat race. You're constantly chasing, and just when you think you've gotten to the end of the maze, it's like there's another wall, and it's like, for the average person that they don't have the bandwidth to be able to handle that, and it's just like, I did an experiment on my Facebook a couple of months back because I was proving the fact that these algorithms are designed for negative reactions. All they want is activity. They don't care what you're saying. They just want response, because response drives traffic and action, and that leads to dollars. And that's all it is. And that's why there's so much stuff. There are literally people and bots and AI bots that are generated to post things that they know are wrong because it's going to generate reaction. And that's all that matters. And I purposely did that. I went on there where I have, I don't know, probably over 2,000 chiropractors that I network with on my Facebook. And I said, chiropractic is pseudoscience. And I posted it. And then in the comment, I said, now watch how many people are going to react to this without even reading this comment. I do not believe this. I love chiropractic. It is amazing. And it was, oh, what an idiot, stupid. I've never seen anything worse. And I go, exactly. You're proving my point. You reacted without reading, and that's what they want.
I don't know, I guess.
It was a trigger, and it was done on purpose. And then I'm like, my comment, oh, you almost got me, right? I very clearly don't believe that. Look at everything I've ever said. I very clearly don't believe it, but people didn't read it. They just started reacting because that's what they're taught to do.
Yeah, for sure. Sometimes you wonder if some of the stupid things people say are the people, or if they're a bot saying something stupid. Don't you wonder that sometimes?
Yep.
With some of these things, I'm like, is that a person or is that a bot just acting like a stupid person? It's hard to say.
Yeah.
Could be either.
It's probably a bot programmed by a stupid person, to be honest with
you. Yeah. Yeah.
But all they care about is reaction. They don't care whether it's true. They just care that you reacted. And now they've got 1 million comments on there, and they generated $30,000 off of it, and you're the sucker.
Yeah. It is a very intense world we're living in, and that doesn't seem to be slowing down on the intensity and going in things that's going to be not great for us. Mentally, physically.
You've got to be awake. And I say awake, not woke. You've got to be awake to what's going on in the world, and recognize that, the powers that be, so to speak, do not have your best interest at heart. They don't care. All they care about is money, and that's all they're ever going to care about. They're not here for your well-being in any way.
Yeah.
The system is literally designed to work against the average person. And you can do your own research and dig into that. I'll be glad to talk to you about it, but that's just a fact. And I'm not a conspiracy theorist. Please don't take it as that. I'm not a conspiracy theorist. I'm just telling what I've seen.
Well, we're just at the point where it just defies so much logic. Like you cannot pour, I think, what is this, pesticide bill is like 43,000. Am I right? Is it? I don't remember the numbers. I know it's over 25,000 pesticides that they're trying to get immunity on. 25,000. I mean, there's nothing that's common sense about this. And then they're adding more in there.
Yeah, well, a lot of it, honestly,
I mean, there's no common sense in that.
It's more herbicides than it is pesticides. And here's the kicker about that, right? Most of, if not all of these herbicides that are being used, they're all from salt. They're chemically altered salt. They have poisoned salt against us. Because what they do, they work in the mechanism of the plant and they dehydrate it so that it can't absorb water and nutrients, and that's how it dies. It's literally salt.
Well, I've never heard of that before.
Yep. It's sodium glyphosate. That's what Roundup is. It's all salt. All herbicides are based from salt.
That's new information to me. Well, whatever it does, it doesn't do good things. I don't know.
Well, yeah, because it's chemically altered. So then when you take hypothetically, you take chlorine and add an atom of chlorine to something, right? It can make it really, really bad, but also understand that your body already produces a certain amount of chlorine in it anyway. Same thing with cyanide, You have in apricot seeds, and this is, some people may use this as a cancer treatment. I'm not suggesting this in any shape or form, but there's a process or an enzyme in apricot seeds called amygdalin, and they labeled it B17. It's not a B vitamin. They just called it that because they needed to call it something. So it's amygdalin, and they tell you, oh, well, you eat apricot seeds and it will produce a certain level of cyanide, and that will kill cancer cells. There's really no clinical proof to that. I'm just stating what I've seen. I've personally eaten apricot seeds about 10 times the recommended dose, had no issue with it whatsoever. But they'll tell you, well, you eat that and it produces cyanide, and cyanide will kill you. Well, that's very true in certain doses, but your body already produces some level of cyanide anyway. So it's not like, oh, if you have the smallest little nano dose of cyanide in your body, it's going to kill you. That's not true. And please don't go out and experiment with that and, ingest cyanide or go buy apricot seeds and eat them. I'm not saying that at all. I'm simply saying that the purported statements aren't always true.
Yeah. Well, gosh, and there's a lot of information out there. So,
just be careful of what you accept as truth, right? You just have to, I hate to say do your own research, because most people don't know what they're looking at anyway. But, question stuff. If it's what the masses are doing, it's probably not true.
Well, and also tune into your body. I just keep, there's so much I think we're told to not pay attention to our body. So if we start just trying to do any kind of scan and pay attention to what is this, because we don't listen to our body. We can just completely ignore it unless it's an acute pain.
Yeah, absolutely. You need to let your body heal and recover. I mean, and that it can come in the form of trauma. Trauma can really affect your health in ways you don't realize. Something even as simple as just, hormone balancing, autonomic functions, things like that, like, traumatic things. Here's one thing I can say, and I've watched this from even just seeing like that show, My 600-Pound Life. And you wonder, like, what led you there? Almost every single person had a traumatic experience. Almost every single one. They were molested or something as a child or as a young adult, and they wanted to make sure that never happened again. And so they developed this mechanism by eating and becoming bigger and bigger and bigger, so no one would ever want to touch them again. That's a trauma response.
Absolutely.
That is absolutely.
Yeah. And I have, this is why I am in life the way I am. I know it's because of complex PTSD kind of thing. Yeah. One thing over and over. And I haven't lived through those things, but just psychological more for me, but profound.
Yeah.
And, sometimes I'm like, can we get some research on what this kind of behavior does to your brain? Because it slows down learning. And Absolutely. It stops part of your brain from even able to function. I know that from experience and from adopting children who've been traumatized. Yeah. It affects things that you were really capable of doing, all of a sudden you can't do, or you start to look at something and you want to, there was a time every time I walked into my office, I couldn't function. I had to just almost take fall asleep, and I was so self-hating over that kind of thing, because you don't know what it is. And then someone who knew something said, oh, that's a trauma response. I'm like, it's paperwork, that doesn't make any sense.
Yeah.
But it's interesting.
It's pretty bad. It really boils down to how you're processing things. And when you have trauma responses like that, like what you're referencing, it becomes neuroinflammatory. And when you have inflammation in your brain, you're going to have neurodegradation. And that's, again, one of the things that we are trying to work on with the, blood-brain barrier, intracellular NAD stuff, is to try to remove that inflammation out of there. Because yes, you do have a trauma response, but you don't have to keep it.
I love that. Yeah, I love it, because there's an interaction of all that stuff too.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And I've had several people on that have kind of helped with some of the emotional effect that comes from trauma and how that can affect you physically. So
Yeah.
Igor Siberia was on. He does breath work. Man, that's very transfer. In fact,
Oh, yeah.
I saw, speaking of Jamie, she was at the same one I was at when he came to Reno.
Oh,
And
right
then
on.
I had him at on the show. And
Yeah.
then Carol Stoltenberg is someone I've had on a lot, who has a lot of wisdom around that. And then a trauma coach, Jolyn Armstrong. So she was last on Thanksgiving, and she has some stuff on that too. So,
Yeah.
but I love that you're bringing,
like, even just something simple. I mean, like doing like box breathing even helps tremendously with a lot of people.
it does.
So it's,
Yeah.
there's
Tell
a
people
lot.
what box breathing is, because I love that. And then I don't think anyone's explained that so far.
Yeah. It's just, understanding is you're almost regulating your nervous system with a series of just like inhale, hold, breath, and then kind of just letting time pass as you're almost going from like a panic to just calming yourself down, and you're regulating your breathing, and you're like, physically watching this box, and the ball moves, and it's like, take a breath, hold it, let it out, take a breath, hold it. And you're getting into this pattern and this habit of regulating your breath. And it really starts to just kind of calm you down. And you're just like, oh, okay. I am safe. Nothing's bad. I'm fine.
Yeah. I've heard it kind of like breathe in 2, 3, 4, 5, hold 2, 3, 4, 5, breathe out 2, 3, 4, 5, hold 2, 3, 4, 5, or count to 3 if I was.
See, that's the thing for me. I like to visualize the box and the ball, because counting stresses me out. If I take a breath and I'm like 2, 3, 4, that's work. I don't want to have to do that. So I just take a breath and I visualize the box, because if I'm speaking, now I'm in reaction. And for me, that doesn't work well.
Yeah. Well, thank you for incorporating that kind of trauma response into what you're doing with your work too. So
absolutely.
Yeah, I love that. Thank you so much, Matthew. And you can see more at thepracticalpractitioner.com.
Yes. Thank you, guys. I appreciate your time. Thank you, Mary. It was a pleasure.
Yeah, thank you.
Did you like that? You can watch more episodes here. Subscribe over here. We actually have new episodes with awesome guests every Thursday, so check back in. Is that all?